Hi, welcome to Fiber Focus, the podcast from Sumitomo Electric Lightwave, where we dive into the world of fiber optics and all things connectivity. Speaking of connectivity, we are joined here today by Greg Pierce, our Senior Product Manager for Connectivity Products. We are so happy you're back on the pod this time. Greg, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Meredith. Pleased to be here and looking forward to having a good podcast today.
What are we going to be talking about?
So we're going to talk about some panel products that we have that are kind of out of the mainstream. They're not in our typical Precision Flex panel line, but yet they provide some very good opportunities for customers to save money and have a very nice product in their network.
You said the word typical, which has me thinking about how we always say there isn't a one-size-fits-all network solution. So what is it about these products in particular that make them, kind of like outside of the standard offering?
Absolutely. I'm glad to talk about that. So let me start with our 1RU panel. It's a 1RU. We sometimes call it the lacing shelf, or it's LSA. You'll see that in the part number for it. And that product holds up to 3 cassettes or 3 interconnect panels or MPO cassettes, for example. But it's not like a typical panel in that it doesn't have an outer shell around it. So it's really just a base with a faceplate that holds the cassettes or bulkheads and provides for just connectivity to the jumpers with that basic kind of shelf. So this was designed for a customer application where they really didn't need a full panel in these applications. They just needed something to present the connectors to them and for them to be able to get to. It was one of the key things with these panels is they're really for applications where they're not going to be in a high traffic area, maybe back in a closet or maybe back in a corner, something like that. And again, so you're not going to have a lot of chance for damage to them, that kind of thing. So you don't need the heavy shell around them. You just need something that presents the fiber to the technicians when they do the work. So this particular 1RU version, it handles 3 cassettes, so up to 72 LC fibers. If we go into MPOs or some of the new very small form factors, of course, it can handle a lot more. And it's really not for splicing applications. It's really for applications where you're going to bring connectorized cable into the back of the panel, or in a splice cassette, you can bring cable all the way into the splice cassette, of course. So essentially, you're going to have cable coming all the way to the device, either into the device or connectorized to the device, and then hook up your jumpers from there. So, and dress those out. So it's a lower cost option, and not everybody needs a full panel for these kind of applications. Certainly, when we get into enterprise networks and smaller, maybe schools and universities, things like that, where they're going to have a smaller footprint, this could be an excellent product for them.
So it's less robust. Does that mean there isn't the kind of protection of the individual fibers or the jumpers?
Correct. So we're not going to be doing splicing in this panel. So we're not going to have bare fibers laying in the panel in any way. You're going to bring cables either that are connectorized and plug those into the bulkheads that are in this panel, or you're going to bring cable into the splice cassettes and splice it inside there. So you're not going to have exposed fiber that otherwise, you would want to have a shell around it. But in these applications, you wouldn't have that. So you really don't need the shell. If it's not in a high traffic area and you're not worried about people running into it all the time, that kind of thing, technicians.
It's more like a closet, maybe?
More like a closet application. Think of a meet me room where you have something over in the corner you want to connect up, and it's going to be kind of out of the way and not really gone into very often.
All right. So that's the 1U. What else?
So that's the 1U, and then we have 2U version, actually 2 versions of a 2U version that are similar applications. One of them is set up for interconnect bulkhead panels. The other is set up for cassettes or MPO cassettes. But very similarly to the 1RU, these are going to be for applications where you want to bring a cable that's either connectorized and plug it all the way into the bulkhead. So it's just you're going to bring the cable over to the panel, strain relieve the cable, and then take the various individual connected pieces of cable to the bulkheads. Or you can bring individual cables all the way into the cassettes as well, or what we call socks. That's another term for ways to bring fiber into a cassette to do splicing. And these two panels actually have another feature that they are flush mount. While the 1RU is recessed a little bit and you have that ability to for your tie downs of your fiber and stuff on the front on the jumpers, these are flush mount. So they were really made for in this case, to go into another kind of cabinet. This particular customer that we worked with on the way they were setting up that part of their network. But we found that, hey, these has great efficiency, again, if you're going into an area where there's not going to be a lot of traffic and you can just manage the space around it where there's just not going to be a lot of interference with it. So by taking off the shell from the 1RU and these 2RUs, then you're saving, that money. It makes ease of use actually a little bit easier getting in to plug things in and out. So again, if it's going to be an area that's secured and you're not worried about people tampering with it, then it's a good opportunity to save some money.
It's hard to imagine that there's anybody listening to this podcast who doesn't know what one rack unit is or what two rack units are.
Sure.
But in case there is, can you explain what that is? Like what we're talking about with that?
Absolutely.
1U?
Sure. So that's a size definition within data centers. And typically we're talking about 19-inch wide racks. So that's a fixed rack width. There are other widths, but that's the standard, the more common standard, I should say. And then we're talking about a rack unit. I think it's about 1 3/4 inches tall, something like that. But within these racks, the mounting hole spacing and everything is based on these rack units. And it's a fixed unit across the industry. And so I think a typical rack can hold, 50, 60 rack units. I don't remember right off, to be honest. But that's just how we size the different items that are going to go into the rack. So typically, you want to size it right within a certain rack unit size so you're not wasting space and that kind of thing.
There's like a real estate unit.
Exactly.
Type of, okay. All right.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. No problem at all.
All right. So we've talked about the 1U and the 2U in this less robust product line. Is it a product line or product category?
They're panels, but we might call them more highly efficient panels, highly efficient cost-wise, and frankly, sometimes ease of use, they're more efficient. Also, let me add that we have a third product I'd like to talk about, which is our 3RU splice panel. And so this is a product where we can splice 432 ribbon fibers on a tray, and we have 4 trays in this particular 3RU panel. So we can do a 1728 fiber cable splice in this panel. Now, you think about doing that in a rack and then having these highly efficient devices that you can just jumper or splice in your pigtails to that are going to plug into these other panels. You've really got a highly efficient and quite a lot of capacity available just in a single rack at this point. So sometimes it's could be advantageous to bring a cable, maybe an indoor-outdoor cable, all the way to the rack and splice it in and do your connectivity in the rack versus splicing it into a cabinet and then having to jumper over to a rack, that kind of thing. So it adds another bit of, again, efficiency. Cost efficiency could affect, maybe some connector loss or splice loss, depending on how many of those you might have in your system otherwise. So it's just it's something to think about, certainly, especially for our enterprise network customers, again, smaller users of fiber. Now, obviously, 1728 is a lot of splicing, but you can do less splicing in that cabinet as well, of course.
And then the fiber protection is built into the splice trays, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that is more of a full cabinet type product. So you have protection of all the splices. So with the 1 and 2RUs, you don't have that protection for splicing except, as I mentioned, with the splice cassettes. Because the splice cassettes, everything is contained within the cassette. So the cassette itself is the housing. So I wanted to mention that earlier, forgot to. But so in all these cases, if you're doing any splicing, the splicing is going to be protected. So
it's just some more versatility, right? More options for the customers for their unique deployment needs, right?
Absolutely. It's more opportunities. It's not going to fit everybody, and it's not going to fit all applications. But there are those out there where somebody's probably saying, I really don't need that Robusta panel for this application. There's probably something less expensive out there.
Thank you for joining us today, Greg, and thank you for watching on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe. If you found this content helpful, share it with your colleagues and come back and join us next time at Fiber Focus.